Okay, so this is the summer of 8th grade year. I'm going into high school and I'm 14 years old. And my mom got a job with the government that we knew that she would have to travel, but we never thought about it. So when Hurricane Ike hit, she had to go to Galveston. It was during the summer, so of course we were with her during the summer, spending time on the beach and enjoying her presence. But August rolled around, and when August rolled around, we were like, we're gonna have to go back to school. Are we going to stay in Galveston, or are we gonna go back home to our new house that we had only been living in 2 months before she had to leave? So after a quick answer from my mother, we were told that we're going to go back to Manor and we're going to stay with my grandma. Now, visiting grandparents is one thing, living with them is a total different thing. My grandma is the type of grandma who'll tell you a story that she just told you 5 minutes ago and add in new things that weren't in the first story. So you're looking at her like, okay, I never said anything, I just went along with her. So we get back and we go to my grandma's house and we're staying with her, and things are going kind of, sort of okay. I miss my mom, so I'm in my feelings. I'm emotional at this moment. So I'm going to Facebook. So I'm on Facebook making statuses like, oh, I miss my mom, I want to go home. There's no place like home. If only I could just be in my own bed. I'm tired of sleeping in my grandma's house. Which, my grandma's a good lady. Like, she cooks and cleans breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, all that type of stuff. You know, when you go to grandparents' house, you can get whatever you want. Except, we were living with her, and it wasn't a visit. So we had rules that we had to abide by. You had to make sure your bed was made every day before you left for school. You had to make sure your room was clean before you left for school. You had to make sure that you had good grades. Now, during this time, my mom would pop in every once in a while to surprise us. We'd go home on the weekends and she'd be there, or she'd come to my grandma's house and we'd come home from school and she'd be there. So we were accustomed to those things. It wasn't every weekend, but it was some weekends. So it was one week that I didn't make my bed. And my grandma said, if you do it again, you're not going home. So of course I'm like, oh, she said I'm not going home. I really wanted to make my bed the next day, but I just forgot. So she was like, that's it, you're not going home, you're staying here this weekend. And this is a Wednesday. So I'm like, is she serious? And she's like, you're not going home, and that's it. And so, you know how kids get, when they get behind closed doors, they get big. So I was behind the door and I was like, how you gonna tell me I'm not going home? I'm going to my house. You can't tell me what I can do. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna call my mama. So I got on the phone, I'm calling my mama, and I'm like, Mom, I need you to come home this weekend because Grandma said that I can't go home. And she's like, why did she say you couldn't go home? Just because I forgot to make my bed. How many times did you forget to make your bed? Twice. Well, you know that's one of her rules. Even if I did come home, you're not going home. So I got off the phone with my mom, and I took the phone, and I was like, how you gonna tell me that? How you gonna do this to me? Like, home is where the heart is. And I just really wanted to go home. And the reason we couldn't stay home by ourselves is because my mom said that we weren't mature enough. So during that week, I took the time and I was determined. I was determined to prove that I could be mature. I made my bed, I cleaned the kitchen, I cleaned the bathrooms, I cleaned her room, I cooked, I even cleaned the trash can. Not the inside trash can, the trash can that you got to put on the curb every weekend that sits out in the hot sun and develops an odor. I scrubbed that trash can, and then I went inside and took a shower because that's just nasty. So I'm thinking like Friday's gonna come and she's gonna tell me you can go home. I'm so proud of you. You proved that you could be mature and things like that. Friday rolls around. We get off the bus and walk in the house from school. My brothers already had their bags and stuff packed, and I had my bag packed in my room because I'm just sure that she's gonna say, get your bag, let's go. So I get in the house, she's like, I'm so happy that you did all this stuff here. I'm so proud of you. When I get back from dropping them off, I'll cook you whatever you want for dinner. So she walks out the door, and I'm like, is she serious? I'll be damned if I do all this stuff. And she gonna leave me here. So She comes back, and I'm determined to have an attitude. I usually don't get attitudes, it's totally out of my character, but I was really mad. I was super upset. So I'm like, she's gonna come back in here and she's gonna try to tell me one of her stories, and I'm gonna correct her and I'm gonna be like, you didn't tell that story like that last time. So she said, she complains about a headache that night, and I'm like, well, you're old. Old people get headaches. So the next morning, I'm laying in bed. I close the door. She's an early riser. She wakes up at 5 in the morning and drinks coffee, takes a shower, and everything like that. So I'm laying in bed, and I hear her call my name. And she's calling me, and she's calling me. But I'm like, I'm still mad that I didn't get to go home. So I'm like, if she want me, she's going to have to come in here and get me, because I'm not getting out of this bed and going nowhere. So she keeps calling me and calling me. And I'm like, apparently she don't want me that bad, because she's not getting out. And I keep hearing her call. So I get up and I go to her door and I hear her call. So I crack the door. The door was already cracked. So I opened it a little bit more and I looked in and she wasn't in her bed. So I assumed that she was around the corner in the office. So I opened the door a little bit more and she's lying there on the floor, naked. So I immediately closed the door back and I feel my eyeballs searing and melting off my face. Nobody wants to see their grandmother naked. So I said yes. And I opened and she's like, come here. And so I opened the door back and I got my hand on my face and she says, call 911. And I dropped my hand from my face, and when I dropped my hand from my face, I see a puddle of blood that she's just laying in. So I take the phone and I call 911 and they're like, get her dressed, we're on our way. So I'm stuck with the responsibility of getting my grandma dressed. And so when the ambulance comes and we get to the hospital, the doctor's like, had you not been there, she would not have made it. And I think I'm so selfish because I wanted to go home, but God wanted me to stay here for a reason. So had I not been there, she would not have lived. And had I not got up, who knows what would have happened. So I've learned that maturity doesn't come from me trying to prove that I can take care of myself. Maturity comes from me showing that I can take care of somebody else and be unselfish. Thank you.